All right, welcome everyone to our webinar on Spanish language collection development. I'm Caroline Smith and I'm the Inclusive Services Consultant here at the South Carolina State Library. And we have a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. This webinar will be recorded and I will send out a link to that recording within a couple of days from today. And I will also be here monitoring the chat. So if you have questions during the webinar, feel free to type it in the chat. We may save them for the end, but I will make a note of your question. And also, if you can rename yourself in the participants window in Zoom to include your first name and your last initial or your last name, that's always very helpful for us in taking attendance. And I would also like to acknowledge that our funding comes in part from a Library Services and Technology Act grant, which is provided by the Institute of Museum and Library Services and administered by us, the South Carolina State Library. And as part of that funding, we do send an evaluation out after the program. So please be on the lookout for an email and fill out the survey to give us your feedback. And with that, I will introduce our presenter. Deanna Miranda-Murillo is a collection development librarian at the Austin Public Library, and she has been in charge of the Spanish and World Languages selection for the last 15 years. She also assists with library outreach efforts, so she can be in touch with the community she serves. Before coming to Texas, Deanna worked in school libraries, academic libraries, and specialized documentation centers in her birthplace, Costa Rica. Thank you for being here with us today, Deanna. I'll turn it over to you.
Here you go. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yay!
We can hear you.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you all. I'm very excited that we're going to be sharing a little bit of time together, and please let me know, like Caroline said, write your questions as we go. And I hope I'm going to try it. I have a lot of information I can share. I'm going to try and speak as fast as I can and continue making sense of what I'm saying. But the idea is that we're going to have a little time at the end for questions. And of course, if we don't have the chance to talk at the end and answer questions, you can always reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to help you with anything. So I'm going to share my screen now, and let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so I'm going to minimize my screen here. Okay. So let's begin. So our conversation today is going to be around adult materials for Spanish language, collection development for adult materials mostly. But of course, I'm happy to help in any way I can, as like I said. We're going to start with some general information here. Let me see, I'm gonna close that. Okay, so before we start talking about books, materials, and specific publishers, etc., I wanted to touch or talk about things to consider that are very general that we need to be aware of when we start our selection of materials. First, every Spanish-speaking community is very unique. Their needs and preferences vary from library to library, sometimes even in a city like Austin, that is not that big. We have very clear differences in preferences between one branch to the other. Some branches in the South circulate things that don't circulate in libraries or branches up north. So, and we have, the distance is not that big at all. So when we talk about the Latino community, there is a tendency to see the Latino community as like a whole, but it's actually extremely diverse. In the Latino community, you're going to find people from different countries with different ways of using the language, with different economical, educational backgrounds. Some people are from rural areas and some others from urban areas. So the diversity is immense within the same community. When it comes to ordering, we don't have a perfect provider where you can find all the different formats and types of materials for your community. We usually have to go shopping basically and touch base with different providers to find what we want. Now we have to, when we start selecting materials for Spanish, it's important, I think, to remember that other members of the community might question your decision to buy Spanish materials. So my recommendation is to be prepared. Some community members are going to approach you and probably say, why are you buying materials for this community? They don't pay taxes. Why are you buying materials for this community? They may not have papers, may be undocumented. Why are you buying materials for this community? They should be learning English. I mean, it is really important to prepare yourselves, write all of those questions, do some research maybe, and find those, or talk among yourselves or other colleagues and see what questions you've received from community members, and come up with a set of answers, share those with your staff members, and have everybody on the same page about these issues, about these questions, so you all give the same answer and you all are on the same page. That is very, very important. When it comes to material circulation, there's a principle in business that says that the more you spend in your business, the more money you make, and it kind of applies to collections as well. So the more you buy for your collection, the more that the more it will circulate. When we have collections that are attractive, that have materials that are new, that are you add more, not just once a year or once every other year, but you constantly add, that's going to attract more patrons, and they're going to come more and use the collection more. Something to remember is that the concept of public libraries is very unique here in the United States. Throughout Latin America, we do have, of course, different types of libraries. We have academic libraries, public libraries, etc. But the idea of the library, it's completely different. Usually you go there to do some, to study or to do some research for something, usually is related to school or college, but you don't usually see the library as the place where you go for a program, for a book club, for finding materials, entertaining materials like DVDs or music, and books, of course, that are not academic. So there's a little work that we need to do when we communicate, when we're communicating with our patrons, to kind of, I would say, sell in a way all the wonderful things that we have in electronic format, and of course in other formats like paper or DVD, audiobooks, etc. So for that, my recommendation is, of course, if every time you have the opportunity to go and interact with the community, do so and communicate all those things about the library and invite people to come to the library so they can see for themselves. Okay, now, how do I know what to buy? Okay, so again, we go back to the idea of engagement activities. The more you have, you go out, and the more you find opportunities to come to talk to community members, that will be my number one advice. So we know what is that they would like to see in the collection. I have done that a lot, and it's fascinating. You know, I've participated in different festivals in the city when I know that there's going to be a big percentage of the Latino community coming, and I'm one of the ones that offers help at a table and a booth. And when I'm talking to people, I ask them if they come to the library. If they say yes, I say, oh, what kind of books do you check out? What is that you would like to see? And I introduce myself as the person that selects material. So they usually get really excited and start talking about all the different things that they would like to see that I might not have, or I might not have enough. So that is, I will say, number one, my recommendation. If you have the opportunity to keep statistics just for Spanish materials electronically, or looking at the catalog, or even when reshelving, please do so, especially if you need to justify a budget for the future. You can say, well, these materials are checking out. Having a suggestion box near the Spanish collection, I think it's important to be mindful that not everybody has maybe a cell phone, or if they do, they may not use it as we do, or they might not be as familiar as we are with filling out a form to submit a suggestion through our system, if it's an email or more an automated system. So just having something simple like that will also be wonderful. I actually gonna put one back, and I used to get a lot of suggestions from the public on a little box. Of course, looking for information and reviews on sites like America Reads Spanish or even Goodreads. So that could be one way to do it. There are plenty of other websites that provide book reviews. Usually those are by just, the members of the public that love reading. That's why I didn't include them here. But the most, I would say, important will be America Reads Spanish and Goodreads. Also, just an open search on the web, typing los libros más leídos, or los libros más vendidos, or más populares, and then the name of a particular country. That should give you a list of what are the more popular titles at that country at this moment. Visit online bookstores from different countries. We'll see a little bit of that later. El Sótano, Gandhi, different ones from different countries will just give you an idea of what is that those communities are reading. Of course, following the literary awards, the most important ones I will say are Premio Planeta y Premio Alfaguara, but you can find a list of all the different awards on that link that I'm including here. This website, Lecturalia, has a wonderful list of all the different literary awards, and you can just follow those, and you can use those as a reference for purchasing. And of course, using social media. In this particular case, I'm talking about Twitter, and we'll talk about that a little later. Using social media as a selection tool. If you can follow Twitter, I think is the most useful in a way. If you follow publishers, if you follow authors, just like that, you'll be able to see what's coming up, what they're talking about, and you can get ideas of titles or authors or topics for your collection. Okay, if we go into more detail about what to buy. So let's start with the classics. I think it's important to remember or to have at least one copy of at least one or two of these titles on our shelves. For example, Quixote, of course, I would say the most important book in the Spanish-speaking world. It's one of those that people will look on the shelf. They might check it out, they may not, but just having that gives the collection, I like to think about it as I don't know, like a garden. It's like you have this variety of plants and flowers. Is the same with this, and you feel like you have to have some that are classic to a particular garden. In this particular case, it will be these books, and then when you don't have them, people miss them, and they will probably suggest very often, at least one or of these books. Cantar de Mio Cid, the oldest book in Spanish, works by Gustavo Adolfo Becker, that's an absolute classic. And of course, books by Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. Like I said, you don't have to buy everything, but if you have a couple of those, it will give your collection body, and people will know that, this is like a collection that somebody is really paying attention to. Okay, now if we leave the classics and we go to the contemporary classics, I included here the list of what are considered contemporary classics. So those are books that I will say we should have in our collection. Maybe, again, not everything. I know that you might have small collections at your branches, and you're just beginning. So it will be a little bit of like a potpourri of contemporary classics and other more popular authors that we'll see in a minute, but a good balance between these contemporary classics and other authors will be a good beginning, a good start. So I'm not going to go, of course, through the list, but this is a very good reference, I will say. And different authors, all of them fantastic, that like if there are people are going to recognize very easily when they see them on your shelves. And now, I hope, sorry about that. This is a list of, I hope you can see the top. It's just my title. It just says other authors. So here's a list of other authors that are very, very popular right now from different countries in Latin America. Again, these are authors that you can just feel confident, and you can buy as many or as little as you like from all of this, but those are well-known authors in the Spanish-speaking world. When it comes to translated fiction, I have identified these as the most well-known authors. Authors that people keep asking for. A little recommendation about translated fiction. When it comes to, again, thinking about it as collections, make an analogy between gardening and collections, you might want to sprinkle a little bit of translated fiction in your collection. I wouldn't buy big amount. I wouldn't go like 80% of translated fiction versus 20% fiction is written originally in Spanish. I will do the opposite. I will do maybe 80% in original language and 20% translated fiction, especially if you have small budget. That would be my recommendation. I mean, there are very well known. People look for these authors. For some reason, Fyodor Dostoevsky is very well known and very, very popular still, the Russian author. But Daniel Steele, I mean, everybody that I included here, all these authors are very, very popular. But I will, like I said, I would recommend like an 80%, 20%, and 20% being translated fiction. Now, an area of Latin America that somehow gets invisible, maybe because it's a very small area in the continent, is Central America. As we know, we have a lot of people in our communities that are coming from Central America. So I decided to kind of create a separate slide, including well-known authors from this area of our continent, and they're all like from different countries: El Salvador, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Nicaragua. So I created this so we can highlight these authors and have those available at our branches as well. And when we move on to nonfiction, we have I'm just created this slide with different topics. The ones that I see circulating a lot at our branches. Let me see. And again, I'm just looking at the different topics here. And one that caught my eye is beauty. For example, I just went and visited a branch this week, and they had a lot of beauty books, and they were not circulating at all. And I know that in a Southwest branch, they are like checking out like crazy. So earlier we were talking about the differences even in the same community. So it's a matter of asking your community what is that they would like to see. And when it comes to nonfiction, I thought when I started selecting materials in long time ago, that nonfiction, I was more relaxed about buying translated nonfiction. I thought, well, if it's self-help, it's self-help in any language. But over time, I've learned that it's not really like that. There is a lot of cultural nuances and a lot of differences, even when it comes to topics like self-help that we think are more general and could be applied across cultures. Not so much. An example, there was that very popular book. I think it was popular about, I would say maybe 10 years ago, The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And I remember reading, I was going to buy the book, but not in Spanish, but in Italian for our system. And I remember reading all the reviews from people that had read the book, and they didn't like it at all. And it was a lot of cultural differences that they were mentioning in that. So again, if we can try and find some materials in original language for self-help and and psychology, well, not psychology, but religion and a little bit of business too. I mean, there are some areas where we can cross over, no problem, but there are other ones when you'll see a kind of like a cultural shock, if I may say. Let's move on. I'm trying to go fast so we can talk at the end. Some relevant non-fiction authors. So I included here a combination of translated and also authors that write in Spanish. Jorge Bucay, it's extremely popular. Carlos Cuauhtemoc Sanchez, he writes, I put here fiction or nonfiction. Some of his books are considered by some nonfiction and some are considered fiction. So they are like self-help, but they are presented like a fiction book somehow. So it has a very particular way of presenting or sharing his ideas. Walter Rizzo is huge, Don Miguel Ruiz as well. Anyway, so I came up with a list, and I hope this helps with selection. Of course, we have graphic novels and comics in Spanish. So I will say that maybe the most important work in this area or in this category will be El Eternauta, the first one that I'm listing here, written by Germán Osterheld, and he's from Argentina. And it's very, very interesting. He opened up the world of graphic novels to many, many other writers and artists later. But it's an amazing work, and also his own story is sad and very interesting as well. So and translated works and graphic novels, translated works do well. The only thing, it will be important to double check if the translation is good, because I've heard people, patrons, complaining about some translations that sometimes they're not very accurate. So it will be a matter of talking to your patrons and kind of quizzing them a little bit about what they like or why they will suggest on this area. For Spanish materials in electronic format, what we have, of course, is Overdrive and Hoopla. And for audiobooks, again, the same, Overdrive and Hoopla. Electronic magazines, we have Overdrive. And even though my presentation is about adult materials, I just wanted to mention quickly here a resource for children materials. It's called Make Make. They are amazing. They have amazing ebooks in Spanish for children. The majority of these materials are written by Latin American authors. And you can, ask Lectorum, one of the big vendors, about this particular database. The interface is in Spanish. Everything is fantastic. So you can ask, Lectorum is the one representing this company here in the US. But I highly, highly recommend Make Make. Okay, now we move on to the best publishers. I came up with a list for you on, you can basically purchase materials from all of these different publishers with your eyes closed. Planeta is the biggest publisher in Latin America, with offices in Spain, Mexico. There's one here in the US, and I mean, different countries. It's fantastic, and they are the most important, and that's why we have Premio Planeta, the literary award by Planeta. Alfaguara is the other one, I will say number 2. Fondo de Cultura Económica, they do fantastic books. But all these publishers here in this list are publishers you can trust for sure when doing selection. Now, when something kind of new that is happening with in the world of social media, not that new anymore. It's been happening for the last maybe 10 years or so. Booktubers in Spanish. So usually they review young adult materials, but sometimes they include adult titles as well. And I came up with a list of the ones that are, I would say, the most important. Some of them have been doing videos or vlogs, as they're called, for the last 10 years or so. So they're in all different countries. And so this is very interesting. It's another way of kind of seeing what is that, when we see what materials they're reading and what they're pushing for, that gives us also an idea of what people are looking for when they come to the library. For some reason, a lot of the titles that they recommend are translated books, but that's okay. If we want to make sure that we spend a percentage of our money in translated fiction, we can try and keep up with what they're suggesting, and so we know that we're spending our money wisely when we're selecting translated fiction or nonfiction in this particular case. Of course, with Instagram, we have also Bookstagrams in Spanish, and I included the different names of the Bookstagram people. And this is a very different, you see, I haven't seen a lot of videos here. It's mostly beautifully, in some case, they're beautifully presented books or book covers, very artistic. So another way of kind of looking at what people are suggesting others to read and what we can include in our collections. Now, the big question when we're here in the United States, where do we buy? So we can buy online through the list of bookstores that I included on the left side. And so we have some from Spain, some from Mexico. Norma Comics is in Spain, and Tematica in Argentina. These are bookstores that, I mean, we can import no problem with them. And if you, in your research, you find other bookstores that you would like to purchase from, wonderful. Just make sure you contact them before you place your order and ask them if they're going to charge you by weight when they're doing the shipping and handling, if they're going to charge you by weight or by title. Because I learned that the hard way, that I purchased from some bookstores abroad and they charged me by title, which was kind of unusual. And then I ended up paying more for shipping and handling that from the order itself, which was a little hard, complicated for my budget. Now, on the right column, I put the book distributors. I listed the book distributors in the US. So we have Spanish publishers, Latin American bookstores, independent publishers group, Chilean publishing corporation, Lectorum, multicultural books and videos, Chao Luna, Lorito Books, Libros Centroamericanos. They're very little. There's a couple, and they select materials just from Central America. The Santillana USA through Vista Higher Learning, and Cinco Books. So you can contact any of these distributors, and you can say, can you help me? I have X amount of money and I'm trying to find, I would like to add materials with these characteristics. And usually, they don't have a problem sending you a list with suggestions, so you can select from that list. A lot of them, I might say the majority of them go to Guadalajara Book Fair, and which we'll talk about in a minute, and which, that helps because they can bring a lot of the titles over for you as well from the book fair. Like I said, where to buy, the best place to buy is going to be La Feria Internacional del Libro de Guadalajara. FIL Guadalajara is what it's called, at the end of November, beginning of December. If you are a member of ALA, you can apply for an ALA FIL free pass. They have separate days for professionals and days that are the book fair is open for the public. I highly recommend, if you're going, try to be there for the days when it's open for professionals. The amount of people that go to this international book fair is immense. So the days that is open for the public, you have buses and buses and buses of children coming from different schools, and you cannot walk inside of the convention center where this happens. It's an amazing experience. Something to remember, this book fair is the #2 in the world after the one in Frankfurt in Germany in terms of size. So it's an amazing experience. So it's worth the trip, and it's worth the effort to go. There are a lot of materials that you can find at the Feria at the FIL Guadalajara that you cannot buy once you're here, because you don't have there are some books that do not have the rights to be, purchased or to be sold abroad. So you can only purchase those titles at the book fair. So you might be able to find wonderful books that you can buy there, but you couldn't buy if you were here, or if you order them from with a distributor, because they cannot bring them here if they don't have the distribution rights for the United States. So we see some statistics from 2019. So we have 800,000 people coming, 2,417 publishing houses, and 48 different countries represented. It's also a wonderful opportunity if you're buying materials in other languages than Spanish. They have materials in other libraries and other languages, as well. As I mentioned at the very beginning, Twitter is a collection development tool. If it's wonderful, if you can follow publishers, authors, you have the opportunity to also follow booktubers and bookstores. There are lots of people that do reviews, like Papá Lector or Lectora Errática. They usually just post pictures of what they're reading and what they will recommend. And then we have something, it's called Cámara del Libro. And this is something I haven't seen here in the United States, but every country in Latin America has one of those. Cámara del Libro, it's an organization that represents the publishers of a particular country. Cámara del Libro is the one that is going to represent all the publishers of a particular country abroad. So, for example, at the International Book Fair in Guadalajara, you see an area that has all the different Cámara del Libro, different Cámaras de Libro from different countries, and they all representing different publishers for that particular country. And so when, for example, you do Cámara del Libro de México or Argentina, you will be able to find, or if you follow those, they will give you'll find lots of information about books that are coming up, different things about, the book world of different countries. But, once we have a Spanish collection, the work doesn't end there. We need to also plan for how to promote that collection. And I always think that we as librarians, we are the main selling point. If we see someone browsing the shelves in the Spanish, in the Spanish collection, if you can go introduce yourself, welcome the person. If the person doesn't speak English, it's okay. You can say bienvenido, even if it's just one word. Anything that makes that connection with the person from the Latino community, it's I can tell you that is greatly appreciated. Inviting them to come to the library, inviting them to come and participate in programs, inviting the community to also bring their cultural groups into the library and share with us, their culture. These are all great ways to create that bridge between the community, the library, and collections. Having displays of Spanish materials with the newest materials available. Also getting in touch with different organizations that are working with the immigrant community, or in general with the Latino community. Here in Austin, we have groups from Peru, the Peruvians in Austin, the Nicaraguans in Austin. So we have different groups that are like not necessarily representing the immigrant community, but representing countries. So getting in touch with them would be wonderful, and inviting them to come to the library and giving them a tour. If it's if it's possible, think about bilingual staff or bilingual volunteers. You can reach out to different members of the community and see if there's somebody that will be willing to come and help you with programming, with any ideas that they might have on how to attract the Latino community and welcome into the library. If you have the opportunity to have the children and adult collection side by side, I highly recommend that. Usually in the Latino community, parents will bring their kids to the library thinking that they want to find materials for their children. They forget about themselves. But when the children are browsing their collection and they see something that they might find interesting, is how they discover the collection, that the collection has materials also for them as well. If there are churches or stores or restaurants nearby, just talk to the owners with the different religious groups, and if you can visit them and share information about the library, ask them if you can post a pamphlet or something there, that's another way to create that awareness. If you have the opportunity to ask for marketing funds, to have ads in newspapers and radios, or a little ad inside of a bus, sometimes the buses have little ads inside on this kind of like up in the ceiling, that's another recommendation. If you have the opportunity to talk to your IT department and have like a mini website or a page in Spanish, welcoming the community, showing the list of the new titles or book lists, etc., that would be another suggestion. Programming that connects people with your collections. And that's one way also to create that bridge. An example, I did a dance here at the library. We call it la pachanga. That means like a big dance, a big party. And then we got a DJ that used all our Latin music CDs for this big dance. So I highlighted the CD collection and I had people coming and having fun. I had a table where they could sign up for a library card. And so that type of programming that are connecting people with collections, it's also recommended. And of course, if you have a way of having a presence in social media in Spanish, please do so. I would not recommend having English and Spanish social media because you're trying to reach out to different communities with very, very different interests and cultural backgrounds. So it's better just to have one separate social media that addresses, or that you use for communicating information with the Latino community. Some challenges about what are the challenges? We have many, I know, we all know. Of course, we have the immigration status of our customers. In a lot of cases, they have fear, they feel insecure, they cannot trust. They feel that they cannot trust the library. At the end of the day, we're just another institution, an organization. It looks like a government organization to them. They don't want to share the information that they're the place where they live or any information like that, because they are afraid. So it's another part of the work of working directly with the community and letting them know that the library is here for them, that we welcome them, and that it doesn't matter what their situation is. The library is a place for everybody in the community. Of course, the issue that we mentioned briefly before, a community that doesn't know how the library works. We have a problem with, I would say, a problem with the word library in a way, or a challenge, because the word library sounds like librería. Actually, some patrons call it like that. They call, oh, I went to the libreria, fui a la libreria, but we're not a libreria. Libreria in Spanish means the place where you go buy books. That's a bookstore. So, and I cannot tell you how many times I've helped people that came into the library asking how much they had to pay for the books that, I mean, if we were selling the books, how much they have to pay for the book they had in their hand, because they don't know exactly how this works. So that it's a big challenge. The statistics, there's a lot of in-house use unless you're really paying attention. And even if you do, you may not see all the activity that happens around your Spanish materials, because people are afraid to get library cards. They might come into the library and read the book in-house, and they are going to put it exactly where it was. You might see sometimes books that are flipped on the side, and that's a sign that somebody is marking that spot to put the book back. And then, so that when it comes to looking at automated statistics, you can say, oh no, these books are not checking out, but in reality they are, because they are being used in-house. So also we rely on observation. Sometimes you see the books that are worn out and you're like, well, if they are not being, if I don't see that they are being checked out, but they're worn out, that means that they're being used in-house. Sometimes you can just see areas of the collection that need constant reshelving or constant, fixing, because they're all like messy. So that means that, those are probably very popular areas. They don't check out, but people come in and read in-house. And big challenge, of course, is not having staff who speak the language and that reflect the community. So, but let's not think about that as a barrier. Again, we can reach out to different community organizations or community members that could potentially be volunteers and help us with that if we cannot find someone from the community that could be part of the staff, could become part of the staff. Now, I will say that this is a big challenge, that there is resistance inside of the library itself. When staff, it could be at higher levels, that they are not convinced that of the importance of serving the Latino community. So there's a lot of barriers that are put by other staff members when you're trying to develop this collection. And it's, to me, that is very, very sad. And it's that makes the challenge even bigger. But there's a lot of, I think that when you do some research and you justify with data, if maybe from your demographer, maybe by talking to other community members and having them maybe write letters or send communications asking for those materials, maybe that's gonna help change this notion that the Latino community doesn't come to the library and therefore we should not buy materials for them. And of course, in terms of budget, like paper versus electronic materials, we don't have enough money for both. So we have to decide one or the other. And also, again, knowing the community helps. What is it that our community needs? Do they need paper? Do they need electronic? But ask that to the community. I will recommend not just guess based on what we see, but just kind of like explore what is that our community is, they really want. Where do we go for help? We usually have a Reforma chapter nearby. Please feel free to reach out to them for help, advice, and selection and other topics as well. There's a Reforma think tank on Facebook that you can join. There's a group that's called World Languages Librarians. It's just a Facebook group. You're welcome to join. And of course, contact other colleagues in libraries with similar or bigger collections than yours for advice, for ideas. And let's see. Oh my, I'm out of breath. So now we get to the point where we can talk about your questions, and I'm glad that we have enough time, I think, for that. So thank you very much for being here again, and I'm all yours. Just please tell me your questions.
And we had 2 questions in the chat while you were talking.
Mhm.
One was, can you name some must-have classics for children ages 5 to 10?
I can, if that person can share the an email address, I'll be happy to do that. I'll come up
Great.
with a list for that person. That will be a pleasure.
Okay.
And maybe we should, I don't know, Caroline, if we should mention the webinar for next week.
Yes. So do you want to talk a little bit about that webinar? And I'll put a link in the chat as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So for those that wanted to do collection development for children materials, next year I'll be offering a webinar on that particular topic. It's going to be a very general presentation on different materials for different for children, different ages. So it's going to be with Texas State Library and an Archives Commission, and you know, everybody's welcome to join. So that webinar is going to be just dedicated to children materials, because I know that that's a big question we've had many times, but it's really complicated to add children materials and do adult, because then I couldn't cover as much as I need for children, because there's a lot of information that I could just share about that. So I hope, of course, everybody's welcome to join the webinar. It's free, and but of course, about this particular question, I'll be happy to suggest to submit, to share a list with that person for sure.
Great. And will that webinar be recorded as well?
Yes, it will be recorded. Yes.
So if you're not able to attend, hopefully you can watch the recording. And I see several email addresses in the chat that are interested in that topic. So I'll collect those and we can follow up. And the other question from earlier was, which Spanish American writer would you like to invite to your library for an author talk? Or do you have some ideas if you have a chance to invite an author to your library?
An author, Spanish American. So I guess it would be I'm trying to think about one, because that would be a little different. That would be more like, if it's a Spanish American, that would be someone that writes in English, I'm assuming, but if these books gets translated, or her books gets translated to Spanish, is that what the person it's asking? I would like to see if she could. Hi.
We would like to invite one of the Spanish American writer, and we would like the program mostly in English, so that way everybody can enjoy it, because not so many people are speaking Spanish. So what will be your choice?
Oh, that would be that would be a complete different.
I know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I put you in the spot.
Yeah, because I'm concentrating in like whoever will speak Spanish, so it will serve the Latino community. And I mean, I did fiction in English for the library until this year, so I'll be happy to kind of, maybe Junot Diaz will be a big name that will have those characteristics, because he writes in English, but his books get translated to Spanish. I could also try and find, I'm trying to think about, there may be a couple of Mexican authors that I know that are popular here in the States they write in Spanish, and I'm trying to remember their names. Of course, my brain went blank, but it came and it went away. Sorry about that. But I'll be happy to, if you give me your information, I'll be happy to do that and just give you another couple of names. But it will be, yeah, we'll have to do some more research in terms of that, because that would be like, I will change my hat to fiction in English, but because it's a little bit different from what we intended, I guess. The only one that I'm thinking, like I said, is Juno Diaz will be one that Esmeralda Santiago. Esmeralda Santiago would be another one.
Santiago.
Esmeralda Santiago.
Esmeralda, okay.
Esmeralda. That's another one that comes to mind that I know she writes in English and gets translated. There is another writer from the, it was a book about quinceañeras, and it also got translated. We had her here. I will do, because it will be a little different approach. So I'm happy if I can remember a couple of names. I'll mention them as we go. But right now I'm thinking about big names will be Juno Diaz, Esmeralda Santiago, and I know that the author of Como Agua para Chocolate, of course, my brain, like water for chocolate. She is from Mexico. She, of course, her first language is Spanish, but she also speaks English perfectly. So that could be another author, like the author of like Water for Chocolate.
Diane, can you put your email in
it's right there.
Okay, and I definitely will email you, okay?
Absolutely. I'm trying, absolutely. Let me see if I can find, because now it's gonna, I know that this, let me see. I'm so sorry. Let's see. Laura Esquivel, of course. Laura Esquivel, she came to the library here. She's very approachable, wonderful. And something good that has been happening during these strange times is that we have one of my coworkers has been doing some book clubs. And she has just been kind of contacting different authors and inviting them to the book club. And they say, yes, I can do it by Zoom. So a lot of authors have been open to participating in a Zoom meeting with a group of people from the library. At least that has been our experience. So and I can just say Laura Esquivel came and visited our library, and we had a wonderful experience with her. So
thank you, Diane.
Absolutely. And of course, email me and I'll try and think about putting my fiction hat for and then help you with that as well.
Yes, thank you. And I see lots of folks in the chat have added their suggestions and some links, so I can include those with the recording too. And there's another question about kind of the internal advocacy of Spanish collection development. How can you encourage your library to obtain more materials in Spanish?
I will say data is usually a good place to start. If you have the opportunity to, if there is a demographer, if you're working for a city or county level, and there's a demographer that works for the city or the county or the state, and if you can reach out to that office and say, I want to know, how many people are in this particular area. If you have a service area, you can ask specifically for that service area. And I want the most detailed information as I can about this. it, that could be helpful just to get a sense of like how many people speak Spanish at home, for example. The number here in Austin is 35%, so it's quite high. And we know that is probably higher, but that's the number we see. But if you can start collecting data as much as you can, the data that it's coming from official sources, like I said, like a demographer, that would be wonderful. When you look around you in your city and you see different organizations that are serving refugees, community for refugees, or they're serving immigrant communities, partnering with them, learning about what is that they're doing, what the community they're serving, and learning about, how those communities are distributed around the city. That could be another way. Sometimes something important to remember about the statistics is that, for example, we have one branch here that it's when we look at the service area for that branch, we see that it's a very we don't have a lot of people from the Latino community living in that area. And for a long time, the branch manager there was like, well, we don't need materials, that many materials in Spanish here, because we don't have a lot of people from this community living here. But something this particular branch manager forgot is that a lot of people from the Latino community work in that area. It's they do a lot of different jobs in this part of town. They work in roofing, they work in gardens, they work as nannies. So they're the ones bringing the children to the library, and they let the children read their books, and then they also find the books that they want at that branch. So the movement of the Latino community, that is also something that is important to take into consideration. How do we know that? By constantly looking at statistics, how many books were checked out, what kinds of books were checked out, talking to those, like I said, something simple like just talking to people, getting to know them. If you see a person that comes over and over again, just introducing yourself and talking to this person and asking this person more about the community. I think it's important. So, but sometimes it's also inviting people to advocate for themselves, something that happens very often, and it's kind of related with what we mentioned before, that fear, the fact that you're not in your own country, all of that, it makes people from the Latino community very fearful, and they feel like they don't want to bother. That's usually the tendency. They don't want to bother you with anything. Sometimes they put the books back on the shelf because they don't want to bother the librarian. They want to help the librarian by putting the books on the shelves by themselves. And but inviting people and telling them, if you really want a change, please send a letter. It doesn't matter if it's in Spanish. Send a letter to your somebody in city council, somebody at the library. So encouraging them and explaining them how this whole system works in our cities, and inviting them and telling them you belong here, and your voice is important, and you can be also part of this change. That also helps. So I know it's I wish I had a better formula, but I don't. I'm sorry, but that has been my experience. Trying to help internally, and try to also encourage people to make their voices heard as well.
Great. Thank you so much for your answers, Deanna. And I will add that I typed in the chat, but we do have a not a chapter yet of Reforma, which is the National Association for trying to remember the full name, Services to Spanish Speakers and Latinos. But we do have a task force that is working on becoming a chapter. So I will make sure for those of you who are located in South Carolina that you have the link to get involved. We're currently meeting once a month. And so if you are dealing with challenges of finding materials or advocating for materials and services, this is a good group to, have a space to talk with and work on problem solving.
I know it's the challenge is big, and it comes in different forms and in different basically it's a big challenge, but we're up to it.
So I've just pasted the link for anyone that wants to join that task force and come to the next meetings. And I also pasted a link to the Multilingual Collection Development Grant, which is currently being offered by the South Carolina State Library only for South Carolina public libraries. And the deadline to apply is tomorrow. So hopefully if you were applying, you've already been working on that application or sent it in. But if not, please contact us as soon as possible and let us know that you're working on your application. You can contact me or our Director of Finance, Wendy Copeland. And I will go ahead and type my email in the chat as well. And as many of you know, I'm a consultant and I'm here to help support anyone at South Carolina Public Libraries. So feel free to contact me anytime that I can support you too. And thank you very much, Deanna, for sharing your time and expertise with us.
Oh, no, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. Again, I'm in Austin, but it doesn't matter where I am. I'm always happy to help with anything I can. Again, I wish I could have a magic wand and make those challenges go away and make things better. But all I have is my experience, and I hope that this at least help anyone, just maybe a little story. When I started 16 years ago with this collection, my budget was $500 for everything, and it's been a long road, and now my budget, I can tell you, is not $500. But it's been a long road and a lot of work. So it's possible it doesn't go fast. And what I keep telling people is, like, do not feel bad with yourself if you try once and it doesn't go well. Keep trying, because that's what's going to make a change. So again, if I'm here for you all, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Great, thank you very much. And I haven't seen any additional questions. If you are typing one, please let me know or unmute. And I will go ahead and stop the recording. All right.